The film begins with a peaceful scene in a small village, where a mother is about to give birth to her fourth child. At that time, her eldest son, Raayan, along with his two younger brothers, is waiting nervously outside, hoping for good news. Raayan is especially excited because he dreams of having a baby sister. Finally, the moment comes, and the mother gives birth to a baby girl. Raayan's heart fills with joy cause he finally has the sister he's been wishing for after two younger brothers. Soon after, the local priest asks Raayan to name his new sister, a rare and special honor. There, Raayan proudly names her Durga, after a powerful goddess known for protection and strength in the Hindu faith. Shortly after, we see Raayan taking on the role of a caring and protective older brother. He loves looking after Durga, and he does it with great joy. One day, when their parents go to town to buy supplies, they ask him to look after his siblings while they're gone. Days pass, and Raayan becomes worried when his parents don't return. He continues to care for Durga and his brothers with patience and responsibility. Concerned, Raayan decides to visit the local priest, bringing his siblings along, even though it's raining. The priest comforts Raayan and tells him to rest while he tries to find out what happened to his parents. However, things take a dark turn when he overhears the priest's conversation the next morning. The priest is planning to sell baby Durga for money, as no one knows if Raayan's parents are still alive. In a moment of fear and bravery, Raayan refuses to let anyone harm his sister. When the priest tries to take Durga, Raayan, with the instinct of an older brother, grabs a machete and defends her, striking the priest in a desperate act of protection. At that time, Raayan planned to take his younger siblings to the city. Using his clever mind, he placed big branches in the middle of the road to force a truck to stop. Once the truck halted, he quietly snuck in with his siblings and left the village behind. When they arrived in the city, at a busy market, Raayan woke up suddenly, feeling suspicious of the truck driver. Then, he grabbed a sharp machete, ready to defend his family if needed. Around that time, a vegetable collector named Saker noticed Raayan and sensed something interesting about him. Soon after, Saker approached Raayan, curious about how he and his siblings would survive. There, Raayan calmly replied that he had seen two dogs living in the market, eating and sleeping there. If those animals could survive, so could he and his siblings. He then asked Saker for a job, promising they wouldn't be a burden. With Saker's help, Raayan started doing small jobs around the market. He worked hard and never complained, no matter how difficult the tasks were. Even though the pay was low, Raayan managed it wisely. He made a deal with an old woman selling milk and bread, agreeing to pay her monthly for leftovers to make sure his younger siblings had something healthy to eat. After solving the food problem, Raayan made another deal with Saker. He offered to give up half of his wages if Saker could help him find a safe place for his family to sleep. Saker agreed, and Raayan continued working hard. Soon, people in the market started saying that Raayan would become someone important one day. 20 years later, Saker had grown old and gray. He was in a meeting with a businessman who wanted to take over all the small traders, including Raayan's business. Raayan's younger siblings, now food sellers, were part of the market too. Saker warned the businessman not to mess with Raayan and his siblings, as there were many stories about how they fiercely protected their peace. However, the businessman ignored Saker's warning. Not long after, Muthu, Raayan's eldest brother, who had a reputation for being tough, appeared. The businessman soon regretted his decision when a bottle was smashed over his head. On the other hand, Raayan is now a fried rice seller with a thick mustache, short hair, and a small body. He runs the business with the help of his two younger brothers, Muthu and Manikam. Meanwhile, their youngest sister, Durga, stays at home to take care of the house and do chores. For the past 20 years, Raayan has taken on the roles of a father, mother, and older brother. Thanks to him, his younger siblings have a good life. Manikam, for example, is now a college student. And Durga looks after the house, cleans, and prepares meals for the family to eat together. One morning, Saker comes to visit Raayan. He tells him about Muthu's actions the day before, involving a businessman who works for Durai, a local gangster. At that moment, Saker warns Raayan that the area is controlled by Durai's gang. He suggests Raayan visit Durai to clear up any problems caused by Muthu. Meanwhile, Durai, the gangster boss of the city, is having a meeting with another gangster leader named Setharaman. Setharaman's father used to control the city, but Durai killed him and took over all his businesses and power. When his father was killed, Setharaman was away on business in another country. As soon as he returned, he gathered his father's old followers and formed a stronger, more dangerous group. They ran illegal businesses and weren't afraid to eliminate anyone who got in their way. Now, Setharaman wants to take back the city and all the businesses that Durai had stolen from his father. Even though there is a peace agreement between them to avoid more bloodshed, Setharaman still wants revenge. There, he warns Durai that when the time comes, he will take back what is rightfully his. Shortly after Setharaman leaves, Raayan and Saker arrive at Durai's place to apologize for the trouble Muthu had caused. Upon hearing that, Durai forgives them and says there's no problem between them. But when it comes to the businessman Muthu injured, Durai tells Raayan he will have to handle that issue on his own. On their way back home, Raayan gets bad news from Durga that Muthu has been taken to the police station after the businessman reported him. Soon after, Raayan rushes to the police station to try and stop his brother from going to jail. But because Muthu has caused trouble so many times, the officers are not willing to help this time. The only way to save Muthu is to convince the businessman to withdraw the report. Without wasting any time, Raayan goes to meet the businessman, who is recovering at a clinic. Using soft, polite language, Raayan asks the man to take back his complaint. However, the businessman refuses and threatens to make sure Muthu ends up in jail. That's when Raayan reveals his true side, a side that no one dares to refuse. A few minutes later, the businessman changes his mind and withdraws the report. Raayan successfully brings Muthu home, but he is frustrated. This isn't the first time Muthu has caused problems like this. That night, Muthu went to the bar to drink. Out of all Raayan's younger siblings, Muthu had the heaviest burden. He didn't have a job, didn't want to go to school, and had no diploma, so his future seemed uncertain. Even though things weren't looking good for him, he had a girlfriend named Meghala. However, Meghala's father didn't approve of their relationship because he didn't want his daughter dating someone who was unemployed. But Meghala stayed with Muthu because she loved him. Then there's Manikam, Raayan's second brother, who was sent to college by Raayan to secure a bright future. But like Muthu, Manikam was also getting into trouble. He had started running for student president at his college, but instead of focusing on his studies, he got wrapped up in fights with other candidates who were children of wealthy families. One of the candidates even got the police involved to threaten Manikam into quitting the race. Whenever Manikam couldn't solve his problems, he would always run to Raayan for help. But this time, Raayan didn't help him. Instead, he told Manikam to drop out of the election because it was only going to cause more trouble. Raayan wanted Manikam to focus on his studies and graduate with good grades, not get caught up in politics and problems. Outside of Raayan's life and the world of gangsters, there's a police commander named Surganam. He's been given the job to clean up the city and get rid of all the thugs. At that time, Surganam has a secret plan to make Durai's group and Setharaman's group fight each other, so he can just sit back and watch them destroy one another. To get his plan going, Surganam hires some people to attack Setharaman. However, Setharaman and his men survive because the attackers weren't skilled enough. After the attack, the thugs Surganam hired ask for their payment. But instead of paying them, Surganam kills them all to keep his plan a secret. He claims he had no choice but to do this, as he didn't want any witnesses. And Setharaman, furious about the attack, believes that Durai's group is behind it, just as Surganam had hoped. Now, Setharaman and his team are planning a counterattack. Meanwhile, Raayan is busy with family matters. He is meeting with Durga's future husband's family to discuss their marriage. Everyone agrees on the marriage, but there's one big issue that they want to have a grand wedding ceremony. It was because Durga's fiancé comes from a well-respected family, and he's even a government employee. In their tradition, the bride's family has to cover all the wedding costs, so Raayan is left figuring out how to come up with the money. Muthu is also worried because he has no job and doesn't know how to help. At the same time, Muthu is dealing with pressure from Meghala's father, who keeps insulting him for being unemployed and useless. Instead of trying to fix things, Muthu heads to a bar and gets drunk. Later, Meghala arrives at the bar, furious at Muthu for how he had spoken to her father earlier. She slaps Muthu in front of everyone. Some guys at the bar laugh at the scene, which makes Muthu, who is drunk and angry, lose his temper and accuse them of laughing at him. Suddenly, a fight breaks out between Muthu and Darai's men, and soon others join in, including members of Setharaman's group, who were looking for revenge. There, Muthu finds himself caught in the middle of this big conflict, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the end, Muthu is the only person left alive after the fight. Not long after, Surganum shows up to see if his plan had worked, which getting both sides to destroy each other. As he was leaving, Surganum spotted Muthu lying near the trash. Then, he took a picture, assuming Muthu was part of one of the two gangs. Meanwhile, Raayan comes home after a long day of selling fried rice and is shocked to find his younger brother Muthu badly injured. And Raayan, frustrated that Muthu keeps getting into trouble, calms down and realizes he needs to figure out how to fix this mess again. Soon after, Raayan receives a phone call from Darai, the city's gang leader. To Raayan's surprise, one of the people who died in the bar fight was Darai's son, who had been hanging out with friends. Darai heard that Muthu was involved in the fight and was the only one who survived. He believes Muthu is responsible for his son's death and demands that Raayan hand over Muthu by morning. If not, Darai threatens to send all his men to Raayan's house to kill Muthu and his other siblings. The next day, Darai was mourning the loss of his son, surrounded by his loyal guards. Suddenly, the power went out, and one of his men went to check the generator. At that moment, Raayan appeared and attacked the guards, with Muthu and Manikum joining in to help. Soon, all the guards were defeated, leaving only Darai, who was now terrified. He realized too late that he had made a big mistake by not acting sooner and letting Raayan reach him first. Now, Raayan wouldn't let him live. The following morning, Raayan and his two brothers acted as if nothing had happened. They carried goods to their shop, pretending everything was normal, so no one would suspect them of being involved in the previous night's events. After a long day, Raayan was annoyed with Muthu, who suggested taking over Darai's business and territory. There, Raayan warned him that doing so would only make it easier for them to get caught. Meanwhile, people in the city were trying to figure out who dared to take down Darai. Some believed it was a new gang from outside the area. Setharaman, also curious, ordered his men to gather information on who was behind the attack. It didn't take long before they found out and called Raayan, asking him to come to their headquarters. For the first time, Setharaman met Raayan, the person who had unknowingly made things easier for him by getting rid of his enemy, Darai. Setharaman, excited, kept asking Raayan how he had taken down Darai and his men. But there, Raayan denied everything, insisting he wasn't involved. Setharaman even invited Raayan to join his group, but Raayan refused. He wasn't interested in the world of gangsters and kept trying to convince Setharaman that he had the wrong person. After Raayan left, Setharaman quickly figured out that Raayan was the one responsible for Darai's death, even though Raayan denied it. The look in Raayan's eyes gave it away. Setharaman, feeling uneasy, knew that Raayan could become a threat in the future, just like Darai. To avoid that, Setharaman decided that Raayan needed to be dealt with once and for all. That night, after Raayan borrowed money from the bank for Durga's wedding, Setharaman's men, led by his aide Gama, were already in position, ready to ambush him. However, things didn't go as planned. Gama's men started disappearing one by one, unable to contact each other. They thought it would be easy to kill Raayan, but they underestimated him. And Raayan, who had developed strong survival skills since childhood, was not someone they could easily defeat. Shortly after, Raayan quickly took down all the thugs, except for Gama, who managed to escape. Later, the bodies were sent to the forensics department, where Surganum noticed something unusual about the wounds. They looked like they had been caused by long, sharp needles. It was a signature of Raayan's weapon, which is straight iron rod. Surganum soon realized that this wasn't the work of a gang, but the work of just one person, and he was determined to find out who that person was. While Raayan and his siblings were busy preparing for Durga's wedding, Surganum continued to search for clues about who was behind the recent events. Finally, Surganum discovered Raayan's name and decided to find him in person. Meanwhile, Muthu faced another problem that his girlfriend, Meghala, was pregnant. Now, not only did he have to worry about the wedding costs, but he also needed to quickly find money for the baby's arrival. Then, Muthu started going from one business to another, looking for job openings, but no one could offer him a job. Desperate, he began thinking of other ways to make money fast. And Raayan, aware that Sethuraman could attack at any moment, knew he had to deal with Sethuraman before Durga's wedding the next morning. Then he asked Saker, who was like a father to him, to take care of Durga if something happened to him. Soon after, Raayan went alone to Sethuraman's place. When he found the door unlocked, he wasn't worried cause it seemed like he was being invited in. But instead of finding Sethuraman and his men, Raayan found Durga tied up. Turns out, Sethuraman had kidnapped her earlier that day, setting a trap for Raayan. Now, Raayan and Durga had to fight off a group of armed thugs trying to kill them. Fortunately, he managed to get Durga out of the building, but there were too many thugs, and they kept coming. As Raayan struggled to protect her, Durga was captured again by Sethuraman's men. Just when Raayan thought things couldn't get worse, he saw Muthu and Manikam among the thugs, fighting on the other side. At that time, no one knows exactly what happened, but when Raayan tried to explain that Durga had been kidnapped, Muthu suddenly stabbed him. Manikam also stabbed Raayan, and then they both ran away, leaving their brother lying there, helpless. Soon after Muthu and Manikam left, Durga, who had been freed by the thugs, found Raayan and quickly took him to the nearest clinic with the help of Saker. At Sethuraman's headquarters, Muthu and Manikam were clearly nervous. It turned out that they had been secretly working for Sethuraman. No one knew when or how they joined the group, or why they would betray their own brother. There, Sethuraman apologized, saying he hadn't known Raayan was their brother. He then told Muthu and Manikam to go home. While drinking together, the brothers revealed the reason for their cruelty. They explained that their actions were driven by frustration and anger towards Raayan, who always seemed to control their lives and tell them what to do. He only wanted the best for them, but Muthu and Manikam were too selfish to see that. They felt like Raayan treated everything they did as wrong, which made them resent him more and more. Muthu's troubles began the day he was looking for a job and accidentally met Sethuraman's group. They offered him a lot of money if he joined them. After becoming a member, Muthu convinced Manikam to join too. Without Raayan knowing, they started doing dirty jobs, pretending they were helping to pay for Durga's wedding. And Saker, who overheard their conversation, immediately went to Durga and told her the heartbreaking truth that Raayan, the brother she loved so much, had been stabbed by Muthu and Manikam. The next morning, as Durga's wedding was about to begin, everyone realized that she had disappeared. Shortly after, Muthu and Manikam rushed to ask Saker where Durga was, but Saker reminded them that they had stabbed their own brother. Raayan might forgive them, but Durga, who loved her brother more than anyone, would never forgive them for hurting him. Saker also knew that Muthu and Manikam were heartless enough to let Sethuraman try to kill both Raayan and Durga, who were still recovering in the clinic. Meanwhile, Sethuraman had already sent more thugs to finish the job. Instead of enjoying her wedding day, Durga was forced to keep fighting off thugs to protect Raayan. At one point, Raayan regained consciousness just in time to stop one of the thugs from hurting his sister. Realizing they were no longer safe in the city, a kind doctor helped Raayan and Durga escape to an empty building far from town. For over 9 months, Raayan had to go through a long recovery process due to the severe injuries he suffered. During that time, Muthu and Manikam grew closer to Sethuraman, the man they betrayed their brother for. They were rewarded with high positions and good pay. At that time, Manikam became Sethuraman's personal assistant, while Muthu's entire wedding with Meghala, including the birth of their child, was paid for by Sethuraman. On the other hand, Muthu and Manikam lived in comfort and wealth, completely unaware that Raayan and Durga were quietly preparing to seek revenge. When the 10th month came and Muthu's child was born, Raayan was fully healed and ready. Saker went to meet Sethuraman on Raayan's behalf and demanded that Sethuraman hand over his personal aide, Gama. Upon hearing that, Sethuraman was shocked by the request, but then Saker revealed the terrible truth that during Durga's kidnapping, Gama had done bad thing to her. Then, Saker shared a story about Durga's childhood, recalling when she was bullied by 3 boys who grabbed her hand at school. At that time, Raayan didn't hesitate to punish them severely, leaving them disabled for life just because they touched Durga. Now, with Gama having destroyed Durga's future, Saker warned Setharaman that Raayan would surely do something far worse to him. Setharaman then learned that his new wife had been kidnapped by Raayan, leaving him no choice but to agree to exchange Gama for his wife. Then, Saker told Setharaman the exchange would take place the next morning at the pier. The following day, Raayan outsmarted Setharaman by managing to keep both Gama and Setharaman's wife, making Setharaman furious. Turns out, Setharaman's first wife was secretly pleased by this turn of events. However, Setharaman soon received a call from his second wife, saying she had been dropped off near the station, so he rushed to pick her up. As for Gama, knowing he would face the consequences of his actions, Raayan stepped back and let Durga take matters into her own hands. Armed with a sharp machete, Durga hurt Gama until her anger was satisfied. Meanwhile, Setharaman had captured Saker and was trying to force him to reveal Raayan's hiding place. But Saker just laughed, imagining what Raayan would do to Setharaman. Enraged, Setharaman killed Saker on the spot. On the night of the celebration, Setharaman and his men were stationed around, guarding different points. At that moment, Raayan and Durga were already in the crowd. Soon after, Durga found Manikam and, as revenge for what he did to Raayan, she killed him. Meanwhile, Setharaman and Muthu panicked as Raayan took down the guards one by one, leaving them trapped in the middle of the field with no way out. Once the guards were gone, only Setharaman, Muthu, and a few scared men were left. Within minutes, Raayan eliminated the rest of Setharaman's men. He slowly walked towards Setharaman and Muthu, looking powerful and unstoppable. Instead of apologizing or realizing his mistakes, Muthu foolishly helped Setharaman attack Raayan, not learning from all that had happened. There, Raayan fought back, covering Setharaman in petrol, intending to burn him alive. At that moment, Setharaman remembered Saker's words and how he had laughed, knowing what Raayan would do to him. Now Muthu was the only one left. Raayan wanted to forgive his brother, but Muthu's betrayal was too great, especially because it had hurt Durga, his beloved sister, who had suffered so much. Raayan knew he couldn't let a traitor like Muthu go. In the end, it turned out Raayan wasn't acting alone. He had made a deal with Surganum, who promised Raayan wouldn't have to worry about being arrested. In that moment, Surganum wanted to use Raayan to get rid of the thugs causing trouble in the city. However, Surganum was a clever man, and he planned to kill Raayan afterward to erase any witnesses. Realizing this, Raayan and Durga decided to leave town. They hopped into a truck, just like Raayan had done when he was younger, leaving Surganum behind with many unanswered questions. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is never mess with someone who can handle a machete like a pro, especially if they have a protective streak for their siblings.